How you doing? Got something special for you today. Got a 56 Magnum here. This was gave to me by a local logger. It junked it years ago. Well, they made a series of them. The old 45 Super, which was the same as the 56. I believe that was 52 millimeter bore. They all shared the same crank. Then 56 Magnum was a 54 millimeter bore with the same crank. Then they made a special one. It was a 56 Magnum, but it was a Magnum 2 with electronic ignition. Magnum 2 wasn't 54 millimeter bore, it's 56. Well, isn't it interesting that 66 Magnum was 54 millimeter bore, and we put 56 millimeter big bores on them and make 100cc. It's 99 point something or other. It's 100cc saw class. So Steel was doing that. Well, this one, a lot of loggers back then used these saws to buck logs with, because you could have chain backwards and they cut it. You could bear. They had the awfulest set of dogs that you ever seen. I mean, just you'd kill somebody with them. It's like that. Well, anyway, the piston had stuck, had seized. Well, in the interest that these parts aren't available, you know they're not, I decided to sit in here with some emery, and I got that cylinder cleaned up. There's really nothing that sticks out. In fact, there's very little that sticks in. There's shading, but what it was is some aluminum stuck to it. Not a lot. It wasn't real bad. Well, there's the piston. When you are dealing with obsolete parts, sometimes you try to save something even though, yeah, you kind of wonder. Well, I cleaned this one up. You can still see the shading and the marks. Guess what? That piston will run. That'll run fine. I'm going to tell you why. I took some 320. Don't get aggressive with this if you ever pull this. This is not advisable, but if you want to save something that you can't get nothing for, this is how you get it going. First, you got to know that the piston and cylinder was in good shape before it seized. Okay, because if it was already wore out, you're done. You're not going any further. The biggest thing you want to know is the ring lands. If them ring lands are big, when you put your ring in and it wobbles around, okay, this one doesn't. It's tight. I mean, that's right there tight. Well, when they seize, they grab at hold of that ring. And it's generally on the exhaust side, which was this one too. And any of them marks you see, in fact, it looks worse than it is. It measures nice, it's well within the factory specs. Well, they had a little dome on them, an actual true dome. It wasn't just a pretend. They was getting a little serious with them. And but the one thing I noticed, it is a little bit heavy. But you can sand this down. Anything that's protruding from the surface is what you want to get rid of. Don't try to get the gouges out. All they'll do is hold a little oil. That ain't gonna hurt you none. But then it's a trick getting your ring land. Don't do what a lot of people do, just to go in there and start cutting. You take a ring, even if you got to get an extra set to get a good set of rings, or the ones that was on the piston, if they're still in decent shape, and you roll that ring like that. And what you'll do, that edges of that ring is so sharp, it'll actually remove anything it needs to. Be real slow about this. Okay, once you get that ring where it rolls around through there good, it's removing tiny little particles that are interfering. We don't want a ring sticking. Then you take one of your old rings, or a new one, and you break it. You know them, they got a little bevel right there where they go on your pins here, you know. Take that and start going around there and clean that. Don't spray with some carb cleaner, brake parts cleaner, or something, and scrape it and clean it one side, and then rotate it around so that that little edge is cleaning the other side too. And you'll get rings to go on that piston. But measure it. Okay, when you're done, you can measure all you want to, but sometimes things fit tight or loose. That one is actually incredible. It really is. If you ever want to know, if you want to do what some of the old dirt bikes guys did, they'd take that and they'd put it upside down, and they go like, well, okay, it feels loose that way. This is the piston way the piston rides. Put it in just like it rides, and then shake that. It'll be just a tiny little bit of play is all. And that's what this one's got. Okay? So I worked around this morning. I've got this old 56 millimeter original equipment piston where I could run that with good security. That would actually run good, actually, and the cylinder will run good. Well, I did port map it already. I'm sorry, can't leave nothing alone, can I? Now, I think I've told you guys, the numbers that I use, or I like to use, I found on a specific few non-emission saws, way before EPA. This is definitely was nothing to do with EPA. When I checked the numbers on my intake and my exhaust and my transfer timing, it blew me right away. This wasn't just a good set of numbers without touching it. It was a hot set of numbers. Hot saw, I mean, for a logging saw, I only build logging saws. It was going to be a hot one already right out of the box. Them transfers are mountainous big. I'll get my little light where you can see them. I mean, you're not going to see them as good as I can. But yeah, there you go. See that? They're just mountainous big. I could take a little of that edge out and get more flow. I'm not going to do it. This is an old darn saw. This is a piece of crap barn find. This is exactly what this is a barn find. It was, believe it or not, one of them old cast cloth bathtubs that was in a barn, probably used for a water trough at one time. There was a bunch of crap and hay and everything else in this. And I got looking at that crank. That crank is beefy. It's beefy. Nice heavy crank. And the bearings are beautiful. And I'm going to put seals in this. I'm building me a motor. But I had a bad thing. I said, what about a 56 Magnum big bore piston with a dome? How much does that match up? I've already went through all this, so I know. It works. But I tell you what, you got a pin diameter problem. The pin in the 66 Magnum is 13 millimeter. It's 12 millimeter in the 66 Magnum, the pin is 12 millimeter. In the 56, it's 13. And I'm going to tell you what, the weight difference in them pins is noticeably heavier for the one that's supposed to be in the saw. Well, I'll tell you what else is. That piston, that is not a hollow dome. That's meat. That's heavy. This is, much lighter. Okay? Now, what we ran into was using the 13 millimeter with a 12 millimeter pin. Ain't going to work. It's just sloppy. It just rattles around. So I came up with a wrist pin. You're never going to believe what it was out of. And I measured a rod. Right here's a 66 Magnum crank. That rod end is exactly the same diameter as the rod end in this. So I took a 66 Magnum wrist pin bearing, and I fit that right in there with this 12 millimeter pin. So I went from 13 to 12 millimeter and saved a whole crap load of weight on my wrist pin alone. I saved a massive amount of weight off my piston. This will run. I'm going to save this. I'll put it in the saw someday. So, what we're doing is using a big bore 66 mag piston and a 56 Magnum 2. And it's going to work. The piston skirt is 20 thousandths shorter. Okay? That's good for intake timing. Now, what I was worried about is free porting on the exhaust side. That means the piston is going up too far past the bottom of the exhaust. If that happens, that's called free porting. They don't flow. If you don't see piston all the way down to the bottom of your exhaust, that's why you guys, some of you guys are really good at porting now. I know you are. And some of you got some stuff to learn, just like all of us did when we first started. Don't take nothing off the bottom of that floor. You don't want to risk free porting nothing. It don't run. You just won't. It won't do nothing. It just loses all of its intake charge. Is what it does. So, anyways, it doesn't free port, and that's what we're gonna do. And I'm happy to do this. Now, I need to find the rest of the saw. I need a flywheel. I need some oil pump stuff. I do have a gas tank, but I have a top cover, I think. I got a carburetor, don't have a muffler. Larry Gearhart called me yesterday and he said, I was so touched about your dad's video with your dad's saw. He says, I wanted to help you out. He said, I got some parts. He's got most of a complete saw with 66 mag. They're the same. And he said it's got a handle in it and stuff. So I got a handle for my dad's saw now. And most importantly, Larry, guess where them parts are going? Yes, sir, right on this. This is a fun build. This is what I do on my own time on the weekends. This is relaxing. It's enjoyable. I'm constantly on the weekends doing R&D. I'll promise you that. And I'm doing it even for you guys because I'm not satisfied with where I'm at now. Do I know what I'm doing? Yeah, I can build a good logging saw. I know that. You know that too. So, what point do we stop learning? That's when we don't want to learn no more. I'm going to learn. I'm coming up with new stuff all the time. Wait till you see what I'm doing with Max. 1010s. And then probably the 850s next. Not ready to share that yet. But I will tell you what's going to happen. They're going to run over 12,000 RPMs. I'm going to double the RPMs in the Mac. And I'm going to get rid of the problem of not being able to get parts. The obsolete parts are so tough, especially with popular saws. Problem with the Mac, they ran and ran and ran. They run their guts out. And they'd run good, but nothing left. So you can buy one, and you think it's okay. And then you send it to me, it's like, oh my God, this thing, there's nothing left of it. And then I'm 3-4 months hunting parts. That's why I kind of stopped with the Mac. I said, I will find a problem. And I got solutions. And it's going to work. Okay. This is about all there is for this video because it was just basically what I can do with a junkyard saw. At some point, you'll see this run with no port work. None. Sometimes you just don't. You don't have to. Could I make a difference in this? Yeah. Some. Not a lot. I tell you right now, I wouldn't make a lot of difference. Is there anything better that I could do? Not really. Not that I want to. Not without going stratospherically high with the compression. You know how I've been finger porting them intakes and the Husqvarna and the steel? You need to know where I got it from, don't you? Yeah, you do. Right there. See that little nub? Yeah, pretty much looks the same. It's a finger port. That's what I call it anyway. You can call it whatever you want. That's my own term. So, yeah. So when you see that little nub sticking up right in there, right there, that is what the deal is. See it? That's why I do that left and right grind thing. This is where I got this from. It's from these series saws. It works. Trust me, it works. You ain't got to do it, but I do it. Not on every saw either. Depends on my mood, really. Depends on who it's for. Loggers, I'll have a tendency, in most cases, to give them a little more horsepower because I know they're razor sharp every second if they're dropping trees with it. If I find out they're milling with it, I back it right off. And I tell them, a lot of cases, I know some of you asked, will you build me a big saw for milling? I said, no. No, they run too much heat. In fact, you ought to take the one you got and fatten it up a bit so it can live. That's the hardest thing there is on a saw. The only thing worse is bucking logs that's got 3 inches of mud with stone in it. That's worse. If I know it's a bucking saw, I don't get too crazy. I'll give them good torque if it's the right kind of saw. But this is an interesting project. I bugged you enough today. I'll see you. We got a storm coming in. If it happens like I think, it'll be a couple days before I can load another video.